The wind had a way of reminding a man how small he really was, especially on Christmas night out on the Wyoming plains. It crept through the cracks of the old ranch house like a living thing, whispering memories into corners that hadn't known warmth in years. Eli Mercer sat alone at his rough-hewn table, a single lantern burning low beside a tin cup of coffee gone cold. Christmas had stopped meaning anything to him a long time ago. Out here, days blurred together and nights were just something to survive. Snow pressed against the windows, piling higher with every hour, and the coyotes sang their lonely hymns somewhere beyond the fence line. Eli had once been a different man. Folks in town remembered him as strong and smiling, the kind of rancher who tipped his hat and helped neighbors mend fences without being asked. That man disappeared the winter his wife and unborn child were taken by fever. Since then, the ranch remained, but the heart of it had gone quiet. Christmas Eve used to mean laughter, candles, and warm bread. Now it meant silence and the ache of memories he couldn't outrun. He was just rising to douse the lantern when a sound cut through the storm. At first he thought it was the wind again, rattling the barn doors loose. But then he heard it, a cry. Faint, human. Eli froze, his hand hovering over the lantern handle. No one came out this way, not in a storm like this, and certainly not on Christmas night. He grabbed his coat and rifle out of habit more than fear and stepped into the snow. The wind slapped his face hard, stealing his breath. Snow stung his eyes as he trudged toward the barn, guided by instinct and the weak glow of the moon struggling behind thick clouds. Another cry echoed, clearer now, thin and desperate. His heart pounded in a way it hadn't in years. When he pushed open the barn door, the familiar scent of hay and livestock met him, but something was different. There, nestled against the hay bales, lay a woman. She looked barely conscious, her dark hair plastered to her pale face, arms wrapped tightly around a bundle of blankets. A baby whimpered softly from within. For a moment, Eli simply stood there stunned, as if afraid the scene might vanish if he moved. It felt unreal, like a story from the Bible his wife used to read by candlelight. "Ma'am?" he called softly, kneeling beside her. "You all right?" Her eyes fluttered open, fear flashing through them before exhaustion took over. "Please," she whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. "He's cold." Eli didn't think. He shrugged out of his coat and draped it over them both, lifting the baby gently. The child's face was red from the cold, lips trembling. Without a word, Eli scooped them up and carried them toward the house, every step a battle against the wind. Inside, warmth slowly returned. He stoked the fire until flames roared, then wrapped the baby in blankets his wife had sewn years ago, untouched since her passing. The woman watched him with wary gratitude, clutching a mug of warm broth with shaking hands. "My name is Clara," she said after a while. "This is Noah." Eli nodded. "Eli." She told him pieces of her story, how her wagon broke down days ago, how her husband never returned after riding ahead for help, how she wandered until the storm forced her into the barn. Each word carried pain, but also a quiet strength. Eli listened, something stirring in his chest that felt dangerously close to hope. That night, as the fire crackled and the baby slept peacefully, Eli realized something had changed. The emptiness in the house no longer echoed quite so loudly. Christmas had found him after all, unexpected and fragile, wrapped in blankets and breathing softly by the fire. And if you've ever wondered how one night can change a life forever, stay with this story. What happened next tested faith, courage, and the meaning of family itself. Morning came slowly to the Mercer Ranch, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise over a place that had known so much sorrow. Pale light filtered through frost-covered windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Eli woke in his chair by the fireplace, stiff and groggy, the embers still glowing faintly. For a moment, he forgot everything, until he heard the soft sound of a baby breathing. He looked toward the bed and saw Clara sitting upright, gently rocking little Noah in her arms. The sight struck him harder than he expected. It felt like stepping into a life that no longer belonged to him, a life he had buried years ago along with his hopes. Clara noticed him watching and gave a tired but grateful smile. "He finally slept," she said quietly. "Didn't cry once after midnight." Eli nodded, unsure what to say. Words had never come easily to him, especially after so many years of silence. He poured coffee and set a cup near her, careful not to wake the child. Outside, the storm had eased, but the land lay buried under white, the fences nearly swallowed whole. Any thought of travel was impossible. As the morning wore on, Eli tended to the animals while Clara stayed inside. The ranch felt different now, alive in a way it hadn't been since his wife passed. Every creak of the floorboards and crackle of the fire reminded him he was no longer alone. Yet with that warmth came unease. Strangers brought trouble, especially in a world as unforgiving as the frontier. Clara said her husband had gone for help. But no one simply vanished without a trace. Eli had lived long enough to know that the plains were full of unfinished stories. When he returned inside, Clara stood near the window, staring out at the snow-covered barn. "You don't have to keep us," she said suddenly, her voice steady but eyes searching. "As soon as the road's clear, I'll move on." Eli frowned, surprised by the knot forming in his chest at the idea. "Storm won't clear today," he replied. "You're safe here. That's all that matters." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you," she said, and for the first time her shoulders relaxed. Later that day, as Eli chopped wood, he noticed tracks near the far fence, fresh, partially covered by snow. A horse had passed through recently. His grip tightened on the axe. Someone else was out there, someone who hadn't stopped to help a woman and her newborn in a storm. He followed the tracks until they disappeared into the trees, his instincts screaming that Clara's story wasn't finished yet. That night, Clara finally shared more. She spoke of running from a dangerous man who claimed her husband owed him money, a man who didn't care who he hurt to collect it. Eli listened, jaw clenched, memories of violence he thought he'd left behind rising like ghosts. "If he finds us," Clara whispered, "I don't know what he'll do." Eli stared into the fire, seeing not flames but faces from his past. "He won't," he said at last. "Not while I'm breathing." The words surprised even him. As the baby stirred and the wind howled once more, Eli realized Christmas night hadn't just brought him strangers, it had brought him a choice. Stay closed off or fight for something worth protecting again. And if you feel that tension building, if you want to know whether the past catches up to them or redemption finally finds its way home, the third night after, Christmas arrived with a bitter stillness that unsettled Eli more than the storm had. Snow lay heavy and quiet across the land, muffling every sound, turning the plains into a vast, white graveyard of frozen grass and half-buried fences. Eli stood on the porch long after sunset, eyes scanning the horizon, rifle resting against the wall beside him. He could feel it in his bones now. Trouble was coming, the kind that didn't announce itself with thunder but with the slow, deliberate beat of hooves cutting across empty land. Inside, Clara hummed softly as she rocked Noah by the fire. The baby's tiny fingers curled and uncurled in his sleep. Unaware of the danger creeping closer, Clara tried to keep her voice steady, but fear gnawed at her. She had seen men like the one she was, running from before, men who believed the world owed them obedience, men who used fear the way others used words. She had prayed the storm would delay him, prayed the plains would swallow him whole. But prayers didn't always stop bad men. Sometimes they only gave good ones the courage to stand. Eli came in quietly, shutting the door with care. He studied the room, committing the image to memory. The glow of firelight on Clara's face, the peaceful rise and fall of the baby's chest, the warmth he hadn't felt in years settling into the walls of his home. "If someone comes," he said at last, "you take Noah and hide in the cellar. Don't come out unless I call for you." Clara looked up sharply. "You think he's found us?" Eli didn't answer. He didn't need to. The sound of a horse reached them just after midnight. It started faint, almost imagined, then grew louder, steady, confident, unafraid. Eli stepped outside as the rider emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the snow. The man wore a long coat and a crooked smile, his eyes cold and calculating. "Evening," he called. "Mighty lonely place you got here." Eli didn't lower his rifle. "Turn around," he said. "You're not welcome." The man chuckled. "Name's Caldwell. I'm looking for a woman and a baby. Figure you've seen him." The way he said it sent a chill through Eli. "I said leave," Eli repeated, his finger tightening on the trigger. Caldwell's smile faded. "Careful, rancher. You don't want to die over someone else's troubles." Eli thought of his wife, of the life he'd lost by standing helpless. He thought of Clara's tired eyes and Noah's fragile warmth. "Maybe I do," he replied. The gunshot cracked through the night like a whip. Eli felt the sting in his shoulder as he fired back, the recoil jolting him to the ground. Caldwell cursed, spurring his horse, chaos erupting in the snow. Clara clutched Noah in the cellar below, tears streaming silently as she prayed Eli would survive. When the shooting stopped, the night returned to its eerie silence. Caldwell lay wounded but alive, his horse gone. Eli stood over him, blood soaking his sleeve. "You're done," Eli said. "Sheriff will find you come morning." Caldwell laughed weakly. "You think this is over? Men like me don't stop." Eli leaned closer. "Men like you underestimate what a man with nothing left to lose can do." By dawn, Caldwell was gone, dragged himself away into the snow, leaving a trail of blood and a promise of fear behind him. Eli collapsed against the porch rail as Clara rushed to him, relief and terror mixing in her sobs. He was hurt but alive, and for the first time since his wife died, Eli felt like he had done something right. As the sun rose, painting the plains gold, Eli knew the fight wasn't just against Caldwell anymore. It was against the emptiness that had ruled his life for too long. Clara helped bind his wound, her hands gentle, her gratitude unspoken but powerful. They stood together in the quiet aftermath, two broken souls holding onto the same fragile hope. And if this chapter left your heart racing, if you feel the weight of every choice Eli makes. The days after the shooting passed in a strange, fragile calm, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Eli's shoulder healed slowly, stiff and aching, but each sunrise brought a little more strength back into his body. Clara took over the chores he couldn't manage, moving through the ranch with quiet determination. Noah bundled close to her chest. The house that had once echoed with emptiness now carried the soft sounds of life, gentle footsteps, a baby sigh, the murmur of voices by the fire. For Eli, every sound felt like a gift he hadn't earned, a second chance he never expected to receive. The sheriff arrived a week later, following blood tracks that led nowhere. Caldwell was never found. Some said the plains took him. Others claimed he vanished south under another name. Eli didn't waste time wondering which was true. What mattered was that Clara and Noah were safe for now. The sheriff listened carefully to Clara's story, nodding grimly. "You did right coming here," he told her. "World's rough on folks traveling alone." Before leaving, he clapped Eli on the shoulder. "Took guts what you did. Town could use more men like you." Those words stayed with Eli long after the sheriff rode away. Winter tightened its grip, but inside the Mercer ranch warmth grew. Clara learned Eli's quiet routines, and Eli learned the language of Noah's cries and smiles. Nights by the fire turned into conversations about the past, and dreams neither of them had dared to speak aloud. Clara confessed she had nowhere left to go. No family waiting, only the road and the fear it carried. Eli listened, staring into the flames, and realized the ranch no longer felt like a graveyard of memories. It felt like something unfinished. On a clear morning, weeks after Christmas, Eli made a decision. He stood in the doorway watching Clara laugh softly as Noah reached for the falling snow, his breath puffing white in the cold air. The ache in Eli's chest wasn't grief this time, it was hope. "You can stay," he said simply. Clara turned, surprised. "Here?" Eli nodded. "Long as you want. This place could use a family again." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. "We'd like that," she said. And in that moment, something unspoken settled between them, an understanding that healing didn't erase the past, but it could grow alongside it. Spring would come eventually. The snow would melt, fences would need mending, and crops would need planting. But on that quiet ranch, a home had already begun to grow, forged not by blood or law, but by choice. Christmas night had brought pain, danger, and fear, but it also brought a miracle in its own quiet, stubborn way. And if this story stayed with you, if you believe in second chances and the power of kindness in a hard world,